So we're using two moving averages, a 5 EMA and a 10 EMA. And so we want the faster moving average above the slower moving average to identify the trend direction. So we want our 5 EMA above the 10 EMA. Let's see, we want the RSI to be less than 50. Again, this is for a long signal. Well, yeah, we want the strength. It's not an overbought or an oversold situation, but it's a strength. So we want the strength of the trend to basically be kind of in a weak direction. So the RSI below 50, less than 50. And then the stochastics, so if we reverse this, the stochastics must be heading up for a long and not in the overbought territory. So as we can see on the image here, the stochastics should be sloping upward, but not in the overbought area yet. So it needs to be below the overbought area. And then here's kind of the subjective part here that I needed help understanding here is the MACD histogram here. So yeah, I mean, it says right here and so the MACD histogram needs to, and if we reverse the text here for a long, so the MACD needs to be below the zero line. So we can see here on the screenshot, the MACD histogram is below the zero line. And then the subjective part is it can start to increase in value and start to increase in value. So I mean, that is so subjective. That is a human trait, you know, that is not a computer trait. So that is what I was hoping to get more clarification on here from Henry. I'm sorry, Wayne. This is Wayne's question. Yeah, I guess I really still didn't get any clarification on the word start. So I'm just going to omit the starting part and just make sure that the histogram is increasing in value and below the zero line there. All right, okay. So let's start with the moving average part. That's pretty simple. And then we'll do the RSI part next. Yeah. All right, so there's a white line on our RSI to identify the 50. All right, and as for the stochastics, let's shrink this up a little bit. All right, so for the stochastics, we'll just use the traditional 20 and 80 values for the oversold and overbought regions. MACD, yeah, nothing special to do with the MACD. All right, I think we got enough to get going here. So let's minimize that and let's get BloodHound open and start working. All right, so first thing you want to do with BloodHound here, right, is you want to assign a file name, you know, to your system here, right? So we can see here in the name up on top, it's completely blank. So we're going to use the change button here and put in today's date for the file name. All right, so now we have our work being saved to a file. Okay, so let's switch to the logic tab and I'm going to hit the new button here. And that's going to start a new logic template for us. And let's see here. So we kind of need a name for this. Let's see. Yeah, it looks like this is kind of an early trend detection. Yeah, it looks like this is trying to identify like the beginning stages of maybe a early trend in the making. Yeah, let's see here. All right, so there you go, right? Making up a name here is sometimes that's the hardest part. Okay, so let's start analyzing the EMAs here. So we're going to use the comparison solver, right? Because we want the EMA 5 to be above the EMA 10. And so that's a comparison there. So just think of the comparison solver as identifying when one indicator is above another indicator. If you ever forget that, all you have to do is look at the outputs here, right? And what are the various outputs? It's A greater than B, or A less than B, or A equals B. You know, we're doing a comparison. Is A above B, or is A less than B, right? And A, you know, A is going to be input A. And B is going to be input B, right? So is one indicator above or below the other indicator? That's basically really all the comparison solver does. And that's what most of charting is, you know, is something greater than something else on the chart. So, all right, so let's get a name in here. All right, there's a name. And then for input A, that's going to be our EMA 5, the faster moving average. Yeah, so input A, you typically want that to be the faster moving component, whether it's the faster moving indicator, or if you want it to be price, you know, if it's the faster moving price. Yeah. All right, let's change the period to 5, and we are done. There we go, there's our EMA 5. And now for input B, that's going to be our EMA 10. All right, put that in there. Switch that over to a 10 period. Click OK. All right, simple enough. So we're just going to use the default settings here for the output. So we want, for a long situation, right, for a long condition, we want A, which is the EMA 5, to be greater than B, which is the EMA 10. And we can see on the chart, all right, there we go. All right, when the orange line is above the red line, then that's the 5, the EMA 5 above the EMA 10. Simple enough. All right, next, we want the RSI to be below or less than 50 down here. So that is a job for the threshold, right? We want the RSI to be less than the 50 threshold level. All right, so we're going to connect that in. Okay, and so for the input, we're going to switch that over to the RSI. All right, there's the RSI, and we wanted it to be a 9 period. And so the RSI actually has 2 plots here. So if you're using the average, you know, make sure you select the average plot. But in this case, we're just using the actual RSI plot. So we got that selected for us. And then next, we're looking for the RSI to be above or below the 50 value. So I'm going to put 50 in here in all of these threshold levels. And then when we go to the outputs here, right, for a long, we're looking for the RSI to be less than 50 for a long output. So we're going to set this one to 1. That's the output we want. And then if we're looking for a short situation, a short condition, then we want the RSI to be greater than 50, right? Basically the opposite. So we'll set that there. And now if we look at our chart, there we go. Whenever the RSI is below 50, right, we're getting a long output from the solver. And of course, if the RSI is above 50, then we're going to get a short output in preparation for that short condition. All right, next, let's see, let's shrink that up. Let's expand the stochastics there. Okay, so the stochastics is 2 parts here. Let's pull up this image here. Yeah, stochastics is 2 parts. So again, this is the text for a short. So it says the stochastics must be heading down. So if it's a long, the stochastics must be heading up or sloping up, right? So we want the stochastics sloping up, and then we want to, so that's one condition. So stochastics is sloping up, and then also we want to make sure that it is below the oversold area. Okay, so that's 2 parts there. Let's do the sloping up part first. And so that is simply going to be a slope solver there. Let's connect that in. All right, and so for the input, we're going to switch that over to the stochastics indicator. Let's see, there's our stochastics. And remember to change your settings if you're modifying them. So we're using it 10, 3, and 3. And you know, it did not say which stochastics line, so I'm going to assume it's going to be the Stochastics D line. So from the screenshot, it looked like it was the smoother stochastics line. And so here we go on the chart. We can see, there we go. So if the stochastics is sloping up, we're getting a long output. And if the stochastics is sloping down here, right, we're getting a short output. All right, simple enough. Okay, so now we want to make sure that the stochastics is below 80 for a long condition, and or I should say, or above 20 for a short situation. So this is another job for the threshold solver. All right, so we're looking for the stochastics to be below 80 for a long condition, or above 20 for a short condition. All right. Okay, so let's switch our indicator over to the stochastics. There's the stochastics. And again, let's remember to change the settings, the indicator settings there. All right, click OK. And so now we need to put in, you know, those threshold values that we're looking for, right? So we're looking for 80 and we're looking for 20. And I'm putting the numbers in twice to remove or basically strip out the fuzzy logic capability of BloodHound. So yeah, so putting in, you know, putting in the threshold levels that you're looking for, putting those in twice removes the fuzzy logic calculations of BloodHound here. And very important here with the threshold solver, your levels, your numbers must be in descending order. So you notice 80 is on top, 20 is on the bottom, but 0, that is not in descending order. So we need a, so for C, you need a number in the middle. And so I'm just going to go with 50, right? So 50 is in the middle of, is in between 80 and 20. So make sure you don't leave C at 0, because 0 is not greater than 20, right? So that would break the threshold solver. So make sure all of your levels are in descending order, right? So we're not going to use C, but we just need to put 50 in there just so that the numbers are in descending order. So we're just going to use 80 and 20 here. So, all right, so for a long, yeah, we'll just go with this. So for a long, the stochastics can be at 80. It could be at 50, and I don't want 10, I want 1 in there. Or the stochastics could be at 20 or below 20, right? So the stochastics can be at any of these values here. And that's acceptable for a long, right? But the stochastics cannot be greater than 80. So we're leaving that output at 0 so that that output is off. There. And let's take a look at the chart. Let's see. If this stochastics, wow, doesn't really ever seem to get above 80. Yeah, it doesn't look like our stochastics is getting above 80. Wow. Yeah, I guess with these faster settings. So just for the sake of seeing something here, I'll make some adjustments. All right, so I'm going to adjust the oversold to 30. And let's actually, maybe let's just go to 25. And we'll adjust the overbought down to 75. There, so I adjusted the lines, and so now That was on the chart. So in BloodHound, I'm going to adjust those levels in the threshold solver, right, to 75 and 25. There. Okay, good. Now we actually have something to see. So you can see where, right, when the stochastic goes into up into 75, right, it's in the overbought. And so therefore that is not valid for a long situation. So there's no output, right? So a long is not allowed if the stochastics is overbought. Yeah, let's see if there's any others. There we go. Here's a few more bars. Yeah. Right. So a long is allowed as long as the stochastics is below the overbought situation. There. All right. So we kind of adjusted that. So we have something to work with here to 75 and 25. There. All right. So again, our thresholds are 75 and 25. All right. So we have, you know, the long condition set up. So now we just need to reverse things for a short situation there. All right. So let's see, let's scroll through here. There we go. All right. So we can see right here, if our stochastics goes into the oversold, then a short is not allowed. And if we look at the output down here, right, if we look at BloodHound's output down here, there's no short output, right? If the stochastics is in the middle, you know, of overbought or oversold, then you're allowed, right? Then a long and a short is allowed, you know, right? Depending on the other indicator conditions, of course. So we can see there that for the majority of the time, the stochastics is in between the overbought and oversold. And so our solver is giving us a long and a short output at the same time, right? Because, right, yeah, as long as the stochastics in the middle, that's fine for an overbought or oversold. Now, of course, for the stochastics, you're supposed to have the slope of the stochastics along with its placement, along with the location of the stochastics. So really, you would do this for the stochastics there, right? So if the stochastics is sloping up and it's below the overbought, then you're okay for a long. And if the stochastics is sloping down and it's above the oversold, then you're okay for a short. So you can see our short output turns off as soon as the stochastics goes below the oversold area. Then the short turns off there. All right, so there's our stochastics condition. So now we can work on the MACD conditions here. So let's pull up our little screenshot here. So we want the MACD histogram to be below 0, right? So negative is below 0. And then we want the histogram to be increasing, you know, to be rising, basically, rising or increasing. So, all right, so let's see, again, having the histogram above or below the 0 line is another job for the threshold solver. So let's connect that in there. All right, let's give this a name here. All right, so we want the MACD histogram to be either below for a long condition, below the 0 line, or above the 0 line for a short condition. All right, so let's put the, let's put the MACD in there. All right, and I think, this time, let's see, we're just using the typical period settings for the MACD, but this time we want the histogram or the difference. All right, so NinjaTrader calls it the difference. So we want to, we're using that plot. So, all right, and our threshold level or our threshold value is the 0 line. So we're just going to leave all of our thresholds at 0. And so for a long, we want to make sure the histogram is below 0. And for a short, the histogram must be greater than 0. Right, there we go. Okay. All right, histogram below 0, long output, histogram above 0, short output. And so now the secondary condition is we want the histogram to be rising while it is below the 0 line. So that, right, rising and falling are slopes, right? Just convert, you can simply convert the word rising and falling, to a slope, right? So we want the slope of the histogram to be pointing up. So we're gonna grab a slope solver. And let's move this stuff up a little bit. There we go. All right, so let's put a name in here. Okay, then let's put the MACD indicator, plug that in. All right, and again, we want to use the difference plot, so select that. And there we go. All right, so as long as the histogram is sloping up, we're going to get a long output. All right, perfect. And if I grab an AND node, so we can look at the histogram being above or below the 0 line along with the slope together, right? So there's those two conditions combined. The histogram being below 0 and rising or sloping up, and we're getting a long output. And the opposite, if the histogram is above 0 and falling or sloping down, we're getting a short output. Okay, so there's that. And I do believe that does it. I think that does it. All right, so we just need to combine everything now. So really everything needs to be happening all at the same time. So that just simply means we just connect everything into an AND node. So let's get rid of that. So we just combine everything together like that. Make sure everything is basically happening or true at the same time. And let's see if we actually get any results here. Yeah, it doesn't look like I'm getting anything here. Oh, there we go. Hey, there we go. There's a signal. So let's take a look at this. It's hard to see, but but the 5 EMA is just ever so slightly below the 10 EMA. Our RSI was above 50. Our stochastics is kind of in no man's land and it's sloping down. And the MACD histogram is also sloping down and above 0. So there we go. Everything was all met together. So let's switch instruments and maybe something like oil might give us more results here. There we go. There's another short. Ah, here we go. Here's a long. Okay. And let's see here. The R. Oh, I lost my little 50 line. There. All right. So let's see. A long. So yeah. So our RSI had just dipped below the 50 line. Our stochastic is sloping up, and it's still kind of in this no man's land here. And our MACD is below the 0 line, and it is rising. So there. All right. Okay, let's see if there's any other. No, only a couple of signals. All right, so let's take a look at this short signal here. So our RSI is just barely below the 50. And let's see, the stochastics, it looks like it had just turned up. So the stochastics started rising. Yep. So it was falling and then it started rising again. And then the MACD, oh, I'm sorry. This is a short. So no, our stochastics is falling, sorry. Yeah, the stochastics must just barely be falling here. So it looks kind of flat between these two bars here, but it definitely is still just starting to fall right there. And then our MACD histogram is above 0 and it is sloping down, or it is falling. Let's see. Well, all right. So here's an adjustment. Wayne says the RSI needs to be above 50 for a buy. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, you know what, Wayne? You're right. I see in your email you did modify that. Okay. So the RSI needs to be above 50 for a buy. Okay. So let's make that adjustment there. All right. Good catch. So this is our RSI Threshold Solver right here. Right? And there's our name. And so we want the RSI to be above 50, right? So for a long, we want the RSI to be greater than 50. So we're going to turn that output on. And for a short, yep, we want the RSI to be less than 50. So we're going to turn that one on. And let's turn this other one off. So there we go. All right. Yeah, I imagine that's going to make a big difference. And look at that. We can see that already. Yeah. So there we go. Big difference already. So we can see a bunch of signals on the chart there. All right. So there's one big difference. I'll shrink that up a lot. Okay, so there's one adjustment for the RSI. Okay, yeah, so Wayne is also asking, is there any way to check the trend direction of the 4-hour chart as well? There we go. Yeah, so I was wondering what the 4-hour chart was for. Yeah, all right. So, yeah, so we're going to add another component to this. Wayne, I'm going to guess that you're just looking at the EMAs for the trend direction of the 4-hour chart. Yeah, I'm just going to assume that we're just looking at the EMAs, there, the 5 EMA and the 10 EMA being above or below each other on the 4-hour chart as the trend kind of filter for the 4-hour chart. So yeah, that'll be simple enough, right? So that is this solver right here. And if we look at the name, right, that's our EMA 5 above or below the EMA 10, right? And of course, this is on the 15-minute chart, right? Basically the default chart. So if we want to also look at that on the higher time frame, what we're going to do is we're going to switch over to the solvers tab, right? And we need to add a 4-hour time frame. Right now, NinjaTrader does not have a hour bar type. It only has a minute or a day. So we're gonna see that would be 240 minutes to make a 4-hour chart there. So there's our 4-hour higher time frame. And so now we need to also look at this EMA 5 versus EMA 10 on that higher time frame as well. So I have it selected, and then I'm going to hit the copy button. Right? So there's the same. So there's 2 copies of that solver, and so I'm going to take this new one down below here, and I'm going to use the down button. Right? You see, there's an up and down. So the up and down moves solvers between time frames. So I'm going to move it down, right? And so now you can see I have this 5 EMA to 10 EMA comparison solver on our 4-hour chart. And then I also have another one here on the default time frame. So now that I have this new solver on the higher time frame, now I'm going to switch back to the logic tab, go to the solver nodes, and go to existing nodes. And you'll see now there's 2 time frames, right? The default time frame, which is our 15-minute chart, and then the 4-hour chart here. And there is that new solver I just made. So I'm going to click on that, and here it is down here. And right, and you can see right above it, right, it has a little title above it. It tells us what time frame it's on. So let's just move that up top there. What the heck? And we'll connect that in like so. All right. Now, one thing to remember, guys, if we look at BloodHound, it'll tell you, hey, a new chart has been added, so we need to reload NinjaTrader, so that way NinjaTrader can load up that 4-hour chart for us. Right? So simply we're just going to hit F5 on the chart, and that way NinjaTrader can build that 4-hour chart for BloodHound to use. Okay, and there we go. That was it. Simple enough. So if we look at our chart here, I guess we'll leave it like that. So if you want to kind of see what the difference is between, having a higher time frame and not having a higher time frame, I can disconnect it. Yeah, you can see it did get rid of a few signals. I saw some long signals in there appeared, and now they'll disappear. And then also there's some signals over here. Some long signals around here that appeared and disappeared. Let's try that again. Yeah, there we go. So these signals here, those long signals there disappeared when adding the higher time frame. There we go. And it looks like, yeah, here we go. So these short signals will disappear when adding the higher time frame. There. All right. So basically we know that, right, the higher time frame is working for us. So there we go. So we'll just throw that on top. Okay, so there's another adjustment there. So apparently, I guess this screenshot you sent in, Wayne, was giving me all kinds of wrong information here. Sorry, I thought everything you wrote in the email came from this. They're kind of similar here. Okay, so the stochastics, yeah, must be sloping up. And in the overbought region. Okay. All right. So, yeah. All right. Good catch there, Vladimir. All right. So So yeah, let me make that adjustment as well. So our stochastics slope is okay. We do want the stochastics sloping up, but we want to make sure that the stochastics is actually adjust the name here. So we want to make sure that the stochastics is above 75 or below 25, or basically whatever you consider the overbought level or the oversold level. All right, so let's turn off all these outputs here. So we're just going to clear everything out and kind of start from the beginning. All right, so for a long, we want to make sure that the stochastics is overbought. So in other words, greater than 75. So we'll put a 1 in there, and then it's got to be the opposite for a short situation. So we want the stochastics less than 25. So we'll put a 1 in there. Okay, there. So we got that adjusted as well. And let's see. I don't see any signals here, so let's check. Well, actually, yeah, that's right, because yeah, stochastics doesn't really get into the overbought or oversold with this faster moving stochastics. So let's make some adjustments here. All right, so I'm going to put the stochastics back to kind of its normal default period settings here. Yeah, so now I can see the stochastics gets into the overbought and oversold areas more often than it did when it was faster. All right, so let's make that adjustment in BloodHound and see if we can get some signals here. All right, just to make sure things are working. So first thing I'm going to do is go into the slope solver here and change the stochastic periods there. All right, so 7 and 14. So that's one of the stochastics, and our threshold solver is the other one where we need to adjust the stochastics period. All right, so 7 and 14. There we go. All right, good. At least we have a couple of signals here so we can see things are working. So let's take a quick look. And yeah, let's look at these long signals here. All right, so looking at everything one at a time, the RSI is above 50. Our stochastics is in the overbought. The MACD histogram is below 0 or negative, and it is sloping up. Oh yeah, our EMAs, yeah, so we can see the EMA 5 is above the EMA 10, and that also is true on the higher time frame as well. And oh yeah, the other thing, the stochastics needs to be rising. Yeah, so the stochastics is overbought and it started sloping up again. Yeah. All right, so if we know that's true, then everything will be correct for this short signal here. Yeah. So RSI is below 50. Stochastic is sloping down, and it just went into the oversold area. So that's correct. And our histogram, wow, ever so slightly, the histogram is above 0, and we have 1 bar of sloping down on the histogram. All right, so cool. Everything was met. All right, so there we go. another adjustment made. All right, Wayne is disagreeing with Vladimir's suggestion here. And oh yeah, so stochastics is heading up and must not be trading in the overbought. Jeez. All right, we'll do this here. I'll make a little compromise for anybody that wants it to be in the overbought or not be in the overbought situation, right? So basically this solver here is kind of the key here. So what I'm going to do is switch over to our solvers tab. And so there's our stochastics, right? Looking for it to be in the overbought or not in the overbought situation. I'm going to make a copy of it. There we go. And then I'm going to take the original and I'm going to adjust the name so we can tell the difference between the two. All right. So on this solver, we want the stochastics to be below 75 for a long or above 25 for a short. And then what I'll do is just go in and adjust the outputs. Put the outputs back the way I had them. There, like so. Right, so basically I just swapped or reversed all the outputs. So there, so we have one stochastics threshold solver. There's one, and then here's a second one with basically kind of like the opposite conditions. So right, let's see. Yeah, so on this threshold solver, we want the stochastics to be in the overbought or oversold situation. And on this one, the stochastics must not be overbought or oversold. Okay, so let's go back to the logic tab here, and we'll go to our existing nodes. And this is running on the default time frame, right? And there is the other solver right there. So what you can do is, depending on how you want to look at this, you can connect one in if you want it that way, or disconnect it and connect the other one in here. All right, so I'm going to leave it in the way that Wayne had wrote his question. See, he wants to make sure that for a long situation, for a long condition, he wants the stochastics heading up or sloping up and must not be trading in the overbought region. So, okay. So we'll leave it like that. So there we go, guys. Kind of going back and forth there. Kind of offered a little more training on, on how you can kind of switch things up with your system. Kind of change the conditions there. In different ways. So a little extra training on this one.